Finance Minister Tito Mboweni first mentioned an economic multiplier in his supplementary budget speech. This means that government will try to stimulate the economy by increasing its spending. Treasury will be required to borrow more to spend on projects like infrastructure development to create economic demand, and in turn help reduce unemployment, which has significantly increased in recent years.
Just in the same way that a household cannot spend itself wealthy, a government cannot do that either. Simply put, that kind of expenditure ultimately leads to a very short-term stopgap to assist a particular industry or to provide a little bit of relief temporarily to the economy, but very rarely does it result in a long-term benefit.
Glynos has also raised concerns about the rising levels of debt, a growing budget deficit, and rising debt servicing costs, especially with government now being forced to borrow more as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. He warns that the country's debt as a ratio to GDP could rise well above Treasury's forecasts. Meanwhile, ratings agency Moody's has estimated that the country's debt will rise to over 90% of GDP in the next 3 years.
What we have seen is that through the course of time, governments, not just in South Africa, but around the world, debt levels have gradually built up and built up and built up and built up. And if it was true that the multiplier effect would generate more than the magnitude of expenditure, then, of course, governments would be able to manage the situation quite well, and we would hardly ever have any problems in terms of recessions and high unemployment rates. But clearly, it's not as simple as that, and it really just comes down to how productively the funds ultimately get utilized.
Glynos says the success of any stimulus plan hinges on government rooting out corruption. Balentle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Let's take a short break.